Hello, friends, and welcome to episode number 46 of Nostalgia Talk. My name is James Nobes, and I hate school. Actually, I'm kidding. I really do like school, even though I've been out of it for a year. But anyway, I'm James, and today on Nostalgia Talk, I have with me, we're coming on to summer break, and so I thought, hey, it would be cool. Let's do a little summer break video. So I thought that I would invite somebody who, let's just say, his writing definitely, you can tell that he's looking forward to summer break in his writing. Ladies and gentlemen, Dan Gutman.
Hey, James.
I am well, and you?
Very well. Thank you for inviting me on.
Oh, you're very welcome. Now, for those of you who are not aware, Dan is a book author who is most popularly known for the My Weird School series, which is actually where that intro comes from, because if you've never read the My Weird School books, the intro to a My Weird School book is the same every time. The main character, AJ, is always narrating the books, and it always is, my name is AJ, and I hate school. And you can tell that he friggin' hates school and the people that he's around for the most part. And the books are usually always kind of like the same jokes, but with a different story. And I've actually scripted there to be some of those jokes kind of recurring throughout this show. But the names are always so funny. Like it's always a main character's name, like an adult, and then some kind of rhyme to describe their character. Sometimes really insulting, like Miss Daisy is crazy, Mr. Klutz is nuts. Have you ever thought of naming one of the teachers Mr. Tucker?
I've never thought about that one, but I get suggestions from kids and grown-ups all the time. And 99% of the time, I can't for one reason or another. But every so often, somebody will give me a title to use. And you might have noticed that most are dedicated to Emma, who is my daughter. But every time you see another name in there, it's because that person either suggested the title or suggested something, and I decided to to that person.
That's really nice. Wow. Mm.
In fact, I was just going to say that recently, was it not Mrs. Stoker? I'm drawing a blank here. Well, we better move on because that doesn't make any sense.
I do know that I do know that there just was one that came out, Mrs. Stoker. So
Mrs. Stoker, the Joker. Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a little. For those who have not read that one yet, there's new things going on at elementary school.
For anyone not aware, that's the name of the school. It's Elementary School. That's clever.
Named after a woman named Elementary who used to teach there, and they named the. But anyway, after 4 years, they are finally advancing fourth grade, and Mrs. Stoker is the new principal.
Well, congratulations.
So Mr. Klutz is retiring.
Well, congratulations to Mr. Klutz, whatever you're doing in your retirement. Hope you enjoy. And in addition to the My Weird School books, Dan also authored the baseball card adventure series, and also one that's become quite popular in the last few years, The Kid Who Ran for President.
Really? That's become popular in the last few years?
Yeah, it was
1996, James.
It was mentioned on the John Oliver show. He was kind of talking about it being similar to the last United States president.
Who shall remember us?
Yeah, whose name shall not be mentioned. Let's just say he shares the first name as a cartoon duck whose voice actor I've interviewed on this show.
Very, very good. Very good there, James. Yes, actually, Mr. Klutz did not retire voluntarily. He was sort of forced out by Dr. Carl, the president of the Board of Education, who is a longtime rival. What?
Dr. Carbles kills me. Like one of my favorite My Weird School books was Dr. Carbles' Marbles. And for anyone who has not read that one, basically with Mr. Klutz, he's the kind of guy who tries to be more like your pal than a principal. And I mean, like I had a teacher like that. And a lot of the time, Mr. Klutz makes these very, very weird deals with the kids that usually involve him doing something incredibly stupid. And one time he made that deal, and it was close to Thanksgiving in the setting, and let a turkey loose in the school, much to his boss, Dr. Carbles' dismay. And so he fires him. And I remember my father says to me, that sounds like that guy from the movie The Cat in the Hat. You're fired.
Yeah. Dr. Carbles is the true villain. If there is a villain in Weird School, it's Dr. Carbles. He's a really mean guy. He drives a tank, and he's always looking to shut down the school one way or another.
Yeah.
They grew up together. They hate each other. They have a long running feud, and Carbles is looking for a way to get rid of Klutz and shut down the school. And he's finally succeeded in doing by forcing his retirement at age 64. Actually.
He's in his 60s. Holy crap. I never thought,
Yeah,
that.
Neither did I until I needed a reason for him to retire.
That's a good reason. Well, Dr. Carbles, all your wishes have now come true.
He will get his comeuppance, I believe, at some point.
Yeah, but as soon as you were saying, drives the tank, all I thought of was that book, Dr. Carbles' Marbles, where
He's losing his marbles.
Thank you. Yeah, I don't know how I screwed that one up, but anyway, when he basically turned the school into a military camp.
Yes, and if I recall, Mr. Klutz didn't only bring a turkey into the school. Didn't he also marry the turkey? Or
Yes, I think that's right. He did marry the turkey.
I thought so.
Wait, no, he married a pig. He married a pig, actually.
He didn't also marry the turkey.
Well, what happened was he said, I'll marry the turkey depending on I haven't read it in a long time, but depending on some kind of stupid deal that he made, like always. And then he says, well, I can't marry the turkey because we're having it for dinner.
Yeah. Actually, Mr. Klutz, he's really a character in the series that is based on a real person.
I was going to ask you if any of these characters were based on real people.
Some of the names are, but Carbles, I mean, a Klutz, I visited schools and very often I have encountered principals who constantly making deals with the students. If you read 1,000 books or whatever, achieve some academic goal, will put on a monkey suit and ride a unicycle through the cafeteria, for instance. So I thought that would be a really characteristic for a principal to have, and that's why he's like a big overgrown kid, basically.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And I will say, by the way, even though he's retiring, we haven't seen of Mr. Klutz. Okay, that's all I'm going to say.
Okay, yeah, because I was wondering that if he was going to come back, but well, maybe not come back to his job, but come back like to be a character.
Correct. We haven't seen the last of him. Yep.
Okay, well, there's a little teaser for all you regular My Weird School listeners. So now, let's begin. Can you talk a little bit about what inspired you to want to get into authoring and writing and all that stuff? Like, what were some of your inspirations?
To write in general, not just this series.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, let me see. Not to bore everybody with my whole history, but I never took any writing classes in my life. I went to college in New York. I grew up at Rutgers University. And not really knowing what to study, I decided to study psychology because it was the only class that interested me my freshman year. So I was a psych major. I even went to graduate school for 2 years studying psychology, and I hated every second of it and decided that I didn't want to be a psychologist. And I just thought, what do I like to do? And I always enjoyed writing letters to my friends. Writing always came naturally to me. So I decided to move to New York City, where all the starving writers go, and try to make it as a freelance writer. And I did terrible. I was writing for grownups at the time, and I was trying to write, newspaper articles, magazine articles. I was trying to write screenplays. I didn't really know where to focus any skills that I had. And I was getting rejected a million times by everybody and not really earning a living. And it wasn't until 10 years later or more when my son, Sam, I got married and my son, Sam, was born in 1990. I started reading on with him on my lap, for the first time since I was a kid. And I just thought, nothing else is working. Why don't I try writing for kids? And as soon as I started writing for kids, I felt, you know what? This is what I'm good at. This is what I should been doing all along. So I just for kids, and I never turned back. I've been writing for kids ever since. When my first one came out in like 92 or 93. That's the synopsis of my career up before My Weird School, James.
Cool. So what was your very first ever published children's book?
My first published children's book about doing nonfiction. It never even mind to write fiction. I wasn't a storyteller. I don't tell jokes, but had done some adult baseball books for Viking Penguin in the early 90s. And I asked my editor there, would you introduce me to a editor so I could, try and break into children's books? He introduced me to a woman named Elizabeth Law, and we talked a lot about baseball as a fan, And so we made a deal for me to write some nonfiction baseball books. The first one was Baseball's Biggest Blue, and it was about the most famous mistakes made in baseball history. And that was a children's book. And I made a bunch of nonfiction books with Elizabeth at Viking. And at some point, is that all the famous authors wrote fiction, and I wanted to be, so I decided to try fiction, and I switched to writing fiction. And
so what inspired the My Weird School series? Now we're getting to what I know you for.
Yeah, I was doing a lot of books for that age group, and my daughter Emma was in second grade in 2003, and she was reading Junie B. Jones. Did you ever?
Yeah, I love those books.
She was reading Junie B. Jones, and they're still very. And so I thought, there should be something like Junie B. Jones told from a boy's point of view. So I basically concocted My Weird School with that idea in mind, using AJ as the main character. And AJ was named after my son. Sam had a friend named AJ, and I like initial names, AJ, CJ, PJ, TJ, stuff like that. Right. So that's where the name AJ came from. And, I wanted a strong girl character so that AJ and this girl could make fun of each other all the time, basically. So that's where I got a character in his sort of arch enemy and love interest, Andrea Young. And she was named after a big smarty pants know-it-all, smartest kid in the class all the time. So that's where I got the two main characters. And as far as, my name is AJ and I hate school, or I hate whatever, which is, I sort of stole that idea from Junie B. Jones too, actually, because if you recall,
yeah, because it always starts with "My name is Junie B. Jones." The B stands for Beatrice, except I don't like Beatrice. I just like B, and that's all. But the major difference between My Weird School and Junie B. Jones is that AJ has proper grammar.
Interesting you should bring that up. A number of teachers have said to me, I don't want my kids reading Junie Jones because it's teaching bad English.
I hate to say it, but and like I love those books. Like they were a big part of my life too, and I still have a big collection of them. And I was reading them, and I'm texting my sister. I was like, "This girl doesn't know how to talk."
Right? Yeah. In general, the grammar in My Weird is pretty appropriate, but because I want him to seem authentic and I want him to seem like a 8-year-old boy, sometimes things that are like not exactly grammatically perfect, but seem very more authentic as a kid would speak.
Right. And AJ is very much like a typical guy, like into video games and
Pee-wee football.
Yeah, sports and all that stuff. I mean, when I grew up, I was never really a sports person. I tried to get into it, but most of my friends have all my life. Most of my friends are girls, so I've kind of gotten used to like chick flicks and all that kind of stuff. Doesn't bother me at all.
Yeah, I wanted AJ to be really a typically obnoxious, borderline inappropriate kid. And I thought that by starting each book with the line, "My name is AJ and I hate," I would capture the interest a lot of those kids out there, and especially a lot of boys out there who don't particularly like to read, like school. And I wanted to get those reluctant readers hooked on the first sentence. So that start that way. I was going to say, what, a lot of kids assume that I was probably like AJ,
Mhm.
probably an obnoxious little boy. But in fact, I was more like Andrea. I was a good student and I liked school. So,
Mm. So you were talking about AJ being named after a friend of your son's. Did you?
mhm.
And for anyone wondering if AJ stands for something, there was one book. This is kind of cool, actually. This kind of goes to show the rivalry between AJ and Andrea. I will say that at this rate, Andrea acted kind of like a real B word at this point in the story. But she said to AJ, "I know what AJ stands for," and he's like, "I've never told anyone what AJ stands for. How in the hell does she know?" And at one point in the book, she's like, "If you don't be more nicer to me, I am going to tell everyone what AJ stands for." And then finally, I don't remember how, but he cracks, and Andrea says, "Okay, everybody, I have an announcement. AJ's full name is Arlo Jervis." And so ever since then, Andrea has called AJ Arlo. Did
Hello.
you
Yes.
always have AJ's full name in mind?
Actually, is his first and middle name. I've never given him a last name. I don't even know what his last name is.
Oh.
Yes. Jervis is just a middle name. But from the start, I wanted to name him something that was an unusual name for a boy, something that he might feel a little bit ashamed of, that kids would make fun of him for. So I picked Arlo Jervis. Arlo is based on the Arlo Guthrie, who sells his restaurant. Are
Love
you a
Arlo
fan?
Guthrie. Oh, yeah.
Okay. Uh, and just, I thought it sounds like a little, kind of something that a boy might think, oh, I don't want people to know my name is Jervis. So that, and about Neil, the nude kid.
Oh, okay. Let me explain what that means to the listeners. There was one
Okay.
book where their bus driver, Miss Cormel, who has her own language, Cormelese, should we call it? I don't know.
Okay.
Yeah, she speaks Cormelese. So hello is Bingleboo. Um, at one point she says Blattinger, and everyone's like, "Oh my god, she cursed." I guess that's her way of censoring
So
swearing
first
around
word, yeah.
kids. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Zingy Zip, Limpus Cadoodle, which mean
Oh,
shut up and sit down.
you're
Uh,
good. It's
I yeah.
better.
Sorry.
I said, these books better than I do because I don't remember some of these things.
I've been reading them for
The
16
series
years.
this has been going, and some of those books on, kids will ask me specific questions and I can't answer them. Remember every single thing I ever wrote. But I do. The story of Neil the nude kid is important because once why he's called the nude kid, and
Right.
people are always asking me, why is he the nude kid? you know you want
Yeah.
you want
So
to tell the story?
yeah,
Should I?
sure. So basically, Miss Cormel is told that, and the kids mishear what is being said, and they're like, "We have to pick up a nude kid." They're like, "Gross! I'm not riding a bus with a nude kid. Ew!" And I didn't know what nude meant at the time. I was a stupid 7-year-old kid, and eventually. Because and they've experienced so many bus delays that are mostly AJ's fault, and because as you had said, AJ's a typical obnoxious boy, and yeah, this he really went too far this time by screwing up the bus, but he basically finally they get to school. It's the end of the day, and this Neil kid actually walked, and they're like, "Wait a minute, you're you're wearing clothes." And he's like, "Well, yeah." And Mr. Klutz explains, "No, no, no. He's a new kid. He's not a nude kid. He's a new kid." And so ever since then, because of that misunderstanding, they always have called him Neil the Nude Kid.
Yeah. I kind of like the way, like, nobody invents their own nickname. It's always bestowed upon them by other people. And sometimes, like, the simplest thing could become a nickname and stick with somebody for the rest of their life,
I know what you
which is
mean. Yeah.
weird.
I know what you mean. Ever since I've known how to speak, I've called my grandfather Grumpy.
Really?
Mm-hmm.
Grumpy?
It started out Gumpy, and he had a doll of Grumpy from the Seven Dwarfs that was like twice the size of my body at the time, because this was like when I was just a couple of months old, and I think I blurted out the word Grumpy, and it just kind of stuck.
But why do you even call him Gumpy? What does Gumpy mean? Is that some Canadian thing?
I'm not sure, but I think it was my dad who created it.
Oh, okay. All right.
I don't know where it came from, Gumpy and then Grumpy, and here we are now, 23 years later, and that's what he's known as.
Always be.
Yeah, once Grumpy, always Grumpy. Speaking of somewhat insulting nicknames like that, when you, how do you come up with the book names? Like, do you come up with the name of the adult first, or is it like, because they always rhyme? Like, as I had said, Miss Cornwall is not normal. Mrs. Dole is out of control. So, do you often come up with the person's name first, or do you come up with the rhyme first?
The rhyme first.
Okay.
What I did was started out when it was clear it was going to be a series, and it wasn't a series from the start actually, but we can get into that later.
Okay.
I words that mean crazy, you know,
Mm-hmm.
nuts, bananas, loony, out of your mind, whatever, and then think of words that rhymed with those words that could be somebody's name, like bananas, Hannah, loony, Cooney. Out of your mind. At some point, I ran out of words that meant crazy. Switched to things like Mrs. Dole is out of control, Dr. Nicholas is ridiculous, Mr. Harrison is embarrassing,
Mm-hmm.
stuff like that. So I've done like something like 80 of these books now, and it's tough to come up with. The titles are not the problem. The problem is that there's only so many grown-ups who work at a school. In the beginning, it was the teacher, the art teacher, the music teacher, the this teacher, the that teacher. And then I started doing like the guy who mows the lawn and stuff like that. And at some point, I'm just going to be scraping the bottom of the barrel and I guess at that point, my weird school will come to its end.
You've given me so much to look forward to.
I got some, I've got some plans for, at least, so it's going to be going at least for like another 2 years.
Okay, well that's good.
Okay.
Now we really do have a lot to look forward to.
Yeah.
It's kind of funny because I had this memory from back in the day when I got introduced to My Weird School. I was in second grade and in elementary school, and what I like to do is I would read the books and actually replace the characters with myself. Like, I would read it as if I was AJ, and I would even say that the teacher would be calling on James instead of AJ. And all the
Wow.
staff members, like at my elementary school, I would often make it about them, and that was even harder because then I had to find a word that rhymed with their name, which isn't always easy.
Wow. I didn't realize you were such a fan. Have you read like every single book?
I don't know about every single book, but quite a lot. Like when I was really, really young, if there was a new one out, we'd go to the bookstore and get them. We haven't done that in a long time. Maybe I should catch back up on them.
Well, you're free to read adult books at this point, I think.
I don't
But
care. I mean, I want to be a kids writer, like
oh, okay. I didn't know that.
for screenplays. I work in the film industry, and I actually just got a new film job as an on-set associate, and I want to be a TV and film writer.
That's great. Hey, why don't you make My Weird School into a TV show? I think that would be a
I've
good.
always wanted to make My Weird School into a TV show. Like for as long as I can remember, I've always wanted to make My Weird School into a TV show. It would be a really cool show.
One of these days it will happen. I mean, unfortunately, there's not much the author can do to make a book into a TV or anything. It's really up to somebody in Hollywood to like discover the book and say and fall in decide to do that and throw millions of dollars at it. And I've had some nibbles over the years, and actually right now there's nibbles going on, but it's kind of like an I'll believe it when I see it, because I over the years by Hollywood saying we're going to do this, we're going to do this, we're going to do this. None of it ever. I don't get my hopes up anymore.
Yeah. Well, one of these days, maybe I'll help make it happen. I would love
That would
that.
be cool. In the meantime, I was curious. What was your favorite My Weird School book, or favorite scene, or something that really made you laugh, or something that's really memorable to you?
So my favorite My Weird School book, I was thinking about this today, and I think my favorite, if I had to pick, has to be Officer Spence Makes No Sense. And I'll tell you why. When I was in the 5th grade, my teacher, Miss Hillier, hi Miss Hillier, if you're listening, I'll send this to her. She gave us an assignment to take any book that we happen to be reading and do an assignment about it and about the author. And so I don't think I have it anymore, but I did a whole school project on that book and you.
Cool. Wow. Okay. And what was it about that book that was so intriguing?
Uh, I think one of the things I really liked about it, I'm not sure. Probably just that memory that I have.
I'll tell you, I always like that one. It's not my favorite, but I always liked it because there's one scene where Officer Spence throws all the teachers in jail.
Oh yeah, that's the gag for anyone not aware. Like it starts with AJ without his peanut butter and jelly sandwich, and he's like, "Well, that's odd. I don't have my peanut butter and jelly sandwich." And Officer Spence, who's the school's security guard, an elementary school needs a security guard, really?
These days,
Get fair, very fair. Yeah, exactly. And he just assumes that it was stolen just so that he can still have a job. And Mr. Klutz has a peanut butter jelly sandwich, tosses him in jail, keeps looking for it, and their teacher at the time, Mr. Granite, it's like, I don't have the sandwich, but you're an alien. And Mr. Mackey, my favorite part in the whole book is Mr. Mackey reading a book. For anyone not aware, Mr. Mackey's their reading specialist, who's also married to their first teacher, Miss Daisy. And he was reading a book about a bunny, and then Officer Spence cuts him right at the point where Mr. Mackey reads, "But then," and he's like, and Officer Spence comes in and he's like, "That book has a bad word in it. That book has the word but in it." And it's like, no. But with one T. No, he misspelled it. It was supposed to have 2 T's. And now you're going to have kids saying body parts like elbow and earlobe. Wait till they get to be my age and they hear all kinds of dirty words. Trust me. They're going to hear a lot worse when they get to be teenagers.
I just thought that would really love you're thrown in jail. What could be a better fantasy for a kid than that?
Oh God. Yeah, I mean, even Miss Carmel drinking coffee. You're drinking and driving the bus, but it's coffee, but you're drinking it. So basically, Officer Spence went out of his way to create a confrontation.
Right. And I guess it's not a spoiler alert. I'm not spoiling anything by saying who truly did steal the peanut butter and jelly sandwich. It was Officer Spence all along.
He didn't exactly steal it, though. At the end of the book, AJ's mom's like, "Oh, I forgot to pack your peanut butter and jelly sandwich." AJ's like, "But we went through all of that."
Wow, you really do know your stuff.
Mm-hmm. I do remember. I remember when I was trying to think of rhymes for the teachers' names at my elementary school. We had a janitor at the time whose name was Mr. Daw, and I literally told him I was trying to think of a rhyme for his name because he came into my class, and I was like, I'm reading a book and I'm kind of thinking about you as I'm doing it, and I'm thinking of a name to rhyme with Mr. Daw, and he says, "How about Mr. Daw's a straw?" or Mr. Daw watches Hee Haw.
Speaking of rhymes, I a wonderful website called rhymezone.com. I don't know if you could just plug in any word in the English language and it will spit out like every conceivable rhyme for that word. And I use that not only for the title sometimes, but also, AJ does occasional rapping in the books, and I use Rhyme Zone to help me create his raps.
Well, that's interesting. Little behind the scenes fact there.
Yeah, I mean, the first thing I do is I look at my keyboard and I look at all the consonants, and you said, say, raw, taw, yaw, paw, law. That could be somebody's name. So that's that's what I'll start with. And if I can't find anything, then I'll go to Rhyme Zone to find rhymes for whatever I'm trying to figure out.
Interesting.
Yeah.
So as the My Weird School books have kind of gotten older, there's been different little sub-series in those little books as well. And by which I mean My Weird School Days, My Weirder School, My Weirdest School. Why is that? Is there a reason?
Why? There's a reason. If it was up to me, I would have just numbered them, 1 through 75 or whatever. But actually, it was the publisher's idea to break them into series. After 21 books in My Weird School, they came to me and they said, let's stop this one now and start a new series. And I said, why? And they said, well, more books that. Because like a number 1 on a book is better than 2, basically. Mm-hmm. So I did 21 books in My Weird School. Then we started School Days, 12 books in that series. And then we did My Weirder School. We're about the new series, actually. When we get to number 12, yes, number 12. What are we on now? Stoker is number 11 in My Weirder School. And the next one, number 12, the last book in that series is in the house. Little Mouse, this is coming out in October, by the way. Little Mouse is a teenage, and he's performing at the 3rd grade graduation. So at the end of the series, the kids will graduate from 3rd grade, and I can't imagine another 12 after that series is done. I can't imagine another series. I will have run out of ideas by then for sure. But that'll last us 3 years.
I wonder how they managed to get a big rapper to do their graduation. They must have got him from Rent a Rapper. You can rent anything.
That's true. But actually, no. A friend and relative of Mrs. Stoker. That's how they got her. Okay. They got him.
That's interesting. I do remember that they had Mr. Hind, who was their music teacher for a short period of time to replace boring, snoring Mr. Loring.
Yes. And then Mr. Hind, of course, went on like America's...
American Idol, yes.
American Idol, yeah.
American Idol was very new at the time.
Even still on TV right now?
It is, yep.
Oh, good. Because a lot of the stuff that I mentioned like 18 years ago doesn't exist anymore. Like I mentioned like iPods and that and Kodak. I always say it's a Kodak moment. Kids don't know what Kodak is anymore.
Yeah, they invented iPhones.
Right. Be a little bit careful about mentioning current cultural references because I want the books to stay current, for a long time. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Nice. So if the My Weird School characters had aged normally, by which I mean they were like in 2nd grade when it started, that was 20 years ago. Here they are moving into the 4th grade almost 20 years later. What do you think they'd be up to now?
Well, I could tell you that because today's my daughter's day, and she's 27. Oh. So I would assume that since she was in things started, AJ and the gang would be 27 if they aged like human beings, like The Simpsons, Yeah. This would be for what, 30 years? And Bart and Lisa are still the same age they were back then.
Exactly, so yeah.
You can do that with, with
I remember one episode in which they had their, sorry, not episode. I'm used to doing this with TV people. One book in which they had their second grade graduation. And as you were saying, they have a rapper that's going to be coming to the third grade graduation. I remember for the second grade graduation, somehow they got Bill Clinton to speak. And
Yes.
the whole thing
Why did I
translated
do
to blah 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 blah, which is basically what some of the listeners probably hear from me.
that? Well, that's basically the way grown-ups talk in my weird school world. You know, they catch a few words of what we say, and then it all kind of fades into blah blah. And Clinton, of course, was known for, I don't know why, a real person. I just thought I need a really famous graduation speaker, and I don't know why.
Yeah. Well, got him from Rent a President. You can rent anything.
You can rent anything. That's one of the many catchphrases in my weird school. I've got a whole file in my computer of catchphrases that I try and sneak into every book if possible.
And some of them I've tried to sneak into this podcast.
Yeah. Because I think kids like repetition,
Yeah.
The stories have to be obvious, but if I can like throw in some things that they allows them to like finish sentence on their own because they know it's coming, I think they.
Yeah, I see what you mean there, because I remember one time I opened up a new My Weird School book and my dad's like, "How do you think it's going to start?"
Yeah, and they also all end with the same sentence too. Did you notice
Yes,
that?
yeah, because basically most of them are like recaps of the book, like maybe this, and this will happen. Oh, maybe this, and this will happen, but it won't be easy. That's how they all end. Yep.
But it won't be easy. And the maybes are always completely ridiculous things that are alluded to in the story.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I really have fun with these things. Most of the other books that I do in research, but these books, I just make up crazy stuff in my head. It's really fun.
Hey, all you listeners out there, maybe Dan isn't even a real author. Did you ever think of that? Maybe the real My Weird School author was kidnapped by Dan, and Dan's just impersonating the real My Weird School author.
That's right. Yeah, and maybe I tied up the real author to railroad tracks on the outskirts of town. Who knows?
Well, we'll file a missing persons report.
Okay.
So to wrap up the My Weird School talk before we move on to some other things, what do you think the My Weird School? I'm going to use my radio DJ voice for this. What do you think the My Weird School characters are going to do this summer?
Actually, I'm working on. There have been some specials, like there's a Halloween special and a Christmas special and an Easter special and back to school. And there was even a summer special, but now I'm working on a summer camp special.
Oh,
so next summer, AJ and the gang are going to be going to sleepaway camp for a week. That's going to be fun and brings back all my memories of childhood sleepaway camp. So that's going to be fun. But after Little Mouse, the next book to come out is going to be called Miss Pulls Lots of Pranks. And Miss Banks will be the new, the fourth grade teacher, okay, who's going to replace Mr. Cooper. Obviously, they get a new teacher when they're in fourth grade. So she basically pulls practical jokes all the time. And the one after that, which is like 4 months later, I don't know when that is going to be called Uncle Fred is a Knucklehead.
Oh,
yes, and Uncle Fred, you can't even guess who Uncle Fred is, but. Do you remember any, like, when you were growing up, any kiddie TV shows?
Oh, I still watch some of them to this day.
Yeah. They're always by these, like, weirdos, So the kids get invited to be part of a studio audience of a kiddie TV show. So that's Uncle Fred, Knucklehead. And after that, I just turned in the next My Weird School book after that. I turned it in yesterday. Actually,
nice.
It won't be coming out for over a year. I work like 4 or 5 books ahead, and that it's going to be called Professor Pitt is a Nitwit. Actually, Professor Pitt is a professor of art history, and the kids are going to go to the art museum, and I don't want to give it all away, but I will say that AJ is going to be to create any artwork on his own. So he's just something ridiculous. And Professor Pitt is going to decide AJ is an artistic genius. The say that who was the photographer? The yearbook photographer. Do you remember this, James?
I don't remember there being a yearbook photographer.
Wait,
No.
wait. The one who made AJ into the swimsuit model, the
Oh
Sports Illustrated swimsuit model.
God, I
It
don't
was
remember this.
oh, okay, all right. Well, the photographer came in and decided AJ was perfect for the Sports Illustrated issue and made him into a top male model. And Professor Pitt is going to as the newest like new wave abstract artist and make bazillions of dollars. So that's the next 4 books I think I've described to you that will be coming out over the next 2 years.
It's a good thing that I have a bleeper so I can bleep this out. But I would have gone, if coming from the mind of a grown-up, I would have gone with Professor Pitt is full of.
You know, you laugh, but my publisher is really careful about inappropriate stuff.
Oh, I'm sure. I'm sure they are. Yeah.
And there were a couple of titles they knocked down that didn't seem to be inappropriate at all to me. But like, for instance, I was trying to think of other words that meant crazy. And I thought of the phrase ding-a-ling. Somebody who's a ding-a-ling is crazy, So I had a title, Mrs. King is the ding-a-ling. And they wouldn't let me use that because, I don't know if you know the reference, but
oh yeah,
there was an old Chuck Berry song called My Ding-a-ling.
Yeah.
Okay? And because of that song, I can't use ding-a-ling because it means something other than crazy.
Yep. Yeah. Yeah. It's a little bit of a double entendre there.
So Chuck Berry ruined that title for me, unfortunately. And there were a few others too, where they found some reason why I couldn't use it.
Mm-hmm.
It won't come to mind right now, unfortunately.
Okay. So moving on from My Weird School, let's wrap it up by talking about baseball card adventures. Now, are you a baseball fan?
I am. Not huge. I mean, James, before I get to baseball, I just wanted to say one more thing about My Weird School, if I could.
Let's hear it. Yeah, go ahead.
I just wanted to say, have you read the graphic novels that we come out with?
I've seen them available, but I haven't actually looked through them.
Yeah, a couple of years ago, the publisher came to Jim and I, the illustrator, Jim Paylott.
And that's how you pronounce his name?
Paylott.
Okay,
that's the way I pronounce it anyway.
Okay, I wasn't sure if it was Paylott or so. Yeah, thank you.
I think it's Paylott. Yeah, and by the way, Jim and I, we've been working on this series now for 18 years together, and we've only met once in person.
I was kind of wondering that because I saw in the bios for you guys, I saw Dan Gutman lives in the weird state of New Jersey, and then I saw Jim Paylott lives in the weird state of Arizona, and there's like aliens behind him in the picture. I don't know if Arizona's like that. That's more of Roswell, really, which is in New Mexico. Not that far away from Arizona.
That's true. Yeah. Jim and I, we've only met once. There was they sent me on a book tour, which I found myself in Arizona, and we did a book signing together at a store. Still met. Otherwise, we work by text, by email, stuff like that. Anyway, they came to us and they said, would you guys be interested in doing a graphic novel about My Weird School? And we said, yes. So the first one, I decided that for the graphic novels, it can't be a school setting. It has to be something more visual, more outrageous, So in the first one, it's Mr. Corbett is in orbit, and they take a tour of NASA and accidentally launch themselves into space.
Oh my God.
It's really fun. And it was so much fun and so different to do a graphic novel. And the second one was called Get a Grip, We're on a Trip. And in that one, they take a tour of, they go to a theme park, like a Disney World kind of place.
Oh, that's cool.
I finished the third one, which Jim is working on the artwork now. It won't be coming out till next year sometime. And it's going to be called, you ready for this? Dorks in New York. Yes. Yes, they're coming. They're coming to New York City. What could possibly go wrong?
Well, where's
Anyway,
the My Weird School
um,
series generally set? Like, do you have a picture of that in your head, like where it's usually set?
you know, I mentioned at one point very early on that they lived in California.
Okay.
I didn't really specify where, but I haven't mentioned it since then because I kind of like the idea of them just kind of living in any town, you
Okay.
know? So I don't get specific about where they're located. But I just wanted to just briefly mention the graphic novels because they're new and different and really exciting for me. I don't write them on the computer like a normal book. I just draw like stick figures and cartoon balloons, and I give it to Jim, and he creates these wonderful pieces of artwork based on them. And I hope we'll have more opportunity to do more graphic novels as time goes on. But you asked about baseball.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So
I'm a fan. Not I was a bigger fan when I was younger, actually. But I know more about baseball than any other sport, and it has a very rich and colorful history. So I created the series with this kid who has the power to travel through time using a baseball card like a time machine. And he goes on adventures with various baseball players from the past, like Babe Ruth, Jackie Robinson, Willie Mays, people like that. And I did 12 of those books.
hmm do you ever plan on doing more, like making it a sub-series?
No, it's done.
Okay.
Uh, I did it from like 1997 through 2015. I feel like I told all the great baseball stories I have to tell, and I don't really want to just write about sports all the time. So that's the end of that. But I do like the idea of time travel, and I've used it in some of my other books as well.
Okay. So, random baseball question for you. Who's your
Uh-oh.
team?
The Mets.
Okay.
Actually, I'm going to my first game of the season tomorrow.
My dad is currently in Toronto for a Blue Jays versus Red Sox game.
Okay. Yeah.
Mhm.
The
We're
Red Sox are my second favorite team, I
Oh, then you and
guess.
my dad are going to get along well. He friggin' loves the Red Sox. We actually went to Fenway Park to watch the Red Sox play against the Yankees. This was in 2013, and it was when A-Rod was playing for the Yankees, and at that time, he had gotten in trouble for taking steroids to make him play better. So he comes on, he's announced, he comes on, and this is YouTubeable. Like, you can actually find this on YouTube. The crowd is booing him, and the team chant, "Let's go Red Sox" or "Let's go Yankees." Instead of that, they just go, "You use steroids. You use steroids." Over and over
Wow.
and over again. And we went to the hotel, and it was already on TV.
Wow. Yeah, I love Fenway. I've been to Fenway a few times, and
So, who do you hope is going to win the World Series this year? I bet I can guess the Mets.
well, of course. I mean, I've been a Mets fan since like the mid '60s when they were just starting out and terrible.
Mhm.
And then when I was 14 years old, they went from the worst team in baseball to winning the World Series in 1969, which was astonishing. And 1986, they won it again, which was also pretty amazing because they were down to their last strike against the Red Sox. If you know this whole history with the famous Bill Buckner ground ball that went between his legs and allowed the Mets to, anyway. So yeah, I hope the Mets win this year. And they started off very well, as the Yankees did. But it's a long season, and they have been known to kind of collapse in the second half. So we'll see what happens.
Mm. Well, that's basically everything I've got here. Is there anything else you'd like to say to wrap up?
Well, the only thing I'd say is, I just plug myself by saying I hope the people who are listening out here will follow me on social media. They can go to my Facebook fan page. They can follow me on Twitter and Instagram at Dan Gutman Books. And I really enjoyed talking to you, James. I thank you for remembering all that stuff about My Weird School and having me on. And I hope all the listeners out there will read lots of books this year.
Yeah,
Especially mine.
Yeah, just because you're going to be out of school for 2 months doesn't mean that you should stop reading. Hold on a second. You there? Are you listening to this podcast in class? Yeah, I see you. I can see you, ignoring your teacher. And I'll be honest, I might have done that many, many times when I was a teenager. No, I didn't. Anyway, so to all of you listeners, have a great summer. Dan, thank you very much for coming on the show.
Thank you, James. It was really fun, and good luck to you and your movie career.
Thank you very much. And to all the listeners, I will see you on the next Nostalgia Talk. Peace.